Work-life balance for men is largely ignored, particularly for fathers, according to Cameron Phillips, President and CEO of Vancouver-based Bettermen Solutions. Cameron sat down with Canadian HR Reporter TV to talk about how men can be included in work-life balance programming. Why do you think men's work-life balance needs attention?
Well, understandably, we've spent the last 40 years of the feminist movement and post-feminist movement looking at what this transition of the traditional homemaker role into being a parent and a professional means. And that entire debate, discussion, backlash has all been framed around moms. I mean, the term work-life balance has really become code for mommy overload. And understandably so, when we look at how prior to the feminist movement, women were pegged in that traditional role and they wanted to break out of it, so we had to ask some questions. What I'm saying is we've really only looked at half the equation. We haven't spent any time, or virtually very little time, looking at what has that transition meant for men. What has that meant to their traditional gender roles and their identities and their evolving gender roles as fathers and as caregivers.
What are some issues that are male-oriented?
I think the big challenge, and this is really the key, and I think this is what we've failed to recognize over the last 40 years. You know, we're scratching our heads saying, why is it that women are still coming up against the glass ceiling? We've tried, mentoring programs for women. We've tried all these quotas and things to try and get more women in the workplace. And we sort of complain that women's main responsibility is still in the home, and that's one of the things that's holding them back, is that responsibility at home. What we haven't recognized is that over the last 40 years, while men have expanded what they do, they've certainly, compared to my dad's generation, they do way more on the home front, the domestic front. They're way more involved as fathers. They want to be more involved as fathers. So they've expanded what they do, but men have never lost that core identity of I'm a breadwinner. In other words, when women started flooding, my mom's generation started flooding the workplace to go to work, there wasn't a counter movement of men wanting to divest themselves of that breadwinning role. You're going to come to work? Great. Okay, well, I'll just go home then. That hasn't happened. And as we look at how we've portrayed men in pop culture, how we portray them at work and our attitudes towards men at work, we still, even though we think we're beyond this, cling to that traditional notion that somehow a man is happier to sacrifice time with family for career. And that just isn't true. But unlike women, men really have failed to have the courage to come forward and say, I'm really struggling with this, or we've got this great gender-neutral policy in our workplace, but I want to take advantage of it. And the reason is the stigma attached. Men have seen the way over the last 40 years that women have had their careers sidetracked when they've put family first. That on the mommy track, as we talk about, right, they've sidelined those career opportunities. And men, because that breadwinning role means so much to them, they're not willing to jeopardize that. They don't want to be stigmatized by, and we see this, a man says, I want to take 3 months parental leave in the workplace. And people are like, what? You want to do what? Nobody says that when a mom wants to take that parental leave. So we're still, I don't think by design or out of any malevolence, clinging to that old notion that a mother's brand of love is somehow more significant to a child than a dad's, that a mother is a more competent parent than a father, that what she has to offer her child is more significant, and that frankly, in the life of a child, a mother's presence is more important than a father's. And for some families, they want to stick to that, but really, that glass ceiling will not be smashed until we get to a point where a man will say, yeah, you know what, I'll work part-time so my wife can climb the corporate ladder.
Is there anything employers can do?
They need to change the workplace culture around this and expectations. And they need to change the expectation from you're going to be happy sacrificing family for work to our expectation is that you are going to be an involved parent. Our expectation is that you're going to be the best possible father that you can be. And we're going to do everything in our power to support that. And it could be from the major to we're going to add a couple of weeks of paternity leave, of dad-only leave that you're going to get paid for, or we're going to include you in our top-up, because some companies will top up moms when they take leave, but not dads. Or it's simply just as a matter of attitude. Like, we're going to create a working dads task force where once every 3 months we bring a group of dads together and say, can you look at these policies or look at these practices specifically from a dad's perspective and the challenges that you're facing as a working father. It's making it safe for men to be the caregivers and the involved fathers that many of them want to be on a day-to-day basis.